guys, welcome to first episode of our Florida Crusader YouTube channel and podcast. My name is Greg, and each week I am going to be exploring themes based on classical philosophy, thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and the Western tradition, and then also taking a look elsewhere into the Eastern tradition with thinkers like Osensei and teachings of Aikido, writings of Buddha and other philosophical and theological thinkers, all based around the pursuit of truth, which is what I would define the definition of philosophy to be. Seeking truth and using various principles that these philosophers identify as being something super important for us to have a grasp on, to be able to understand deeply enough that we're able to apply them, not dogmatically, but in a way that's integrated into our life. So what's the difference between those two? When I think of the word dogma, I typically will think of a very rigid framework through which we will understand the fluidity of life. So a great example of this is when you watch the news. I feel that mainstream news and internet news, for the most part, in this day is extremely degraded and uses the framework that is not identified, but is very clearly evident to those who pay attention, of fear, elation, like very extreme emotional responses to help shape our understanding into an unidentified philosophy. So if I'm tuning into Fox News, I'm getting a certain type of filter that is emotionally based when I'm learning about some happening in the world. Same thing with CNN or MSNBC, either side of the political spectrum. And I'm speaking about media in the United States in this case, because that's where I live. I live in Florida, hence the name. And there's a utility to that. I mean, that is a way, and many people are happy to get their information through these kind of filtered sources because they have aligned themselves philosophically with that information source's worldview. A lot of this is unconscious, though. Particularly in the mainstream, you find people that identify with a political philosophy either in accordance with the way that they were taught and raised, or in opposition to the way that they were taught or raised to think. So I think it's really important for us to go back and find the root sources of various philosophical schools so that then we can apply root source philosophical understanding to events in our life, to news that we come across, and be able to understand not only what's happening, but also the frame in which information is presented to us. So I feel like that this is the undertaking of anyone, regardless of their political disposition, regardless of their educational background, to be able to apply so that then they're able to make an educated decision as to what philosophical underpinnings are important to apply in their understanding of XYZ events. So to start with, we're going to really go into looking at the teachings of Plato in his book, The Republic. If you've never read this book or heard of this book, it is a really fantastic deep dive into the Western philosophical ethos. In my opinion, Plato is top 5 most important philosophers of all time, and this book is kind of his magnum opus, again, in my opinion. So in the Republic, Plato identifies 4 classical virtues which define what he calls the good. So if something is good, it possesses these 4 classical virtues. The virtues of wisdom, self-control, justice, and courage. So we're going to take a look at what the definition of each of these virtues are and then how those things are important in our day-to-day life or in the understanding of the world around us. I feel that Plato's intention in writing the Republic, which is spoken, as most Plato's writings are, through the voice of his teacher, Socrates. So he uses Socrates, who is a historical character, in like a play setting, like a play you would see on a stage and you would go attend as a participant or as an audience member. And Socrates is presenting to a group of other Greek philosophers some questions that then they are going in through the Socratic method, which is presenting an argument, hearing counter arguments, and then working out and perfecting the truth in the initial argument by making accommodations to challenges to that argument. So it's a very intelligent way to approach philosophy, again, in the framework of a very Western ethos. So Plato's Republic, we're going to be doing a deep dive on to kind of take a look at what's going on inside this text. Why is this text important? Why is this text something that people refer to again and again? To introduce the four classical virtues, though, I think it's really important to understand a definition of traditionalism that I think is really intelligent and very adequately applied. I came across this definition by studying Julius Evola's writings, philosophical writings from the 1900s. And one of the things that he says that I think is so intelligent is he defines traditionalism and conservatism as this. He says that the conservative mentality is not to try to make things, to reverse things and make things now how they used to be, but rather to use time-tested wisdom and applying those principles and that wisdom to the modern day. So looking backward at what has been deemed wise, good, and just throughout history. What are the common elements from society to society, from aeon to aeon, that continuously present these four classical virtues most clearly? And I think that this is a really intelligent way to understand why people turn backwards to see how they should proceed forwards, right? So in the modern era, there's a very difficult to challenge perspective because it's so ingrained in the minds of modern thinkers, and that is that the idea of progressivism, that living now is superior to living 20 years ago. Living 20 years ago is superior to living 50 years ago. Living 50 years ago is superior to living 200 years ago, right? So the basis of this is what is often referred to as scientism, or the religion of technological progress. So technological progress, medical innovation being the primary criteria for society's improvement. So to start with, and to start understanding why Plato's Republic is something that is a worthwhile text to really explore, not only for just out of curiosity or just to learn something, but really to dig into how do we apply the four classical virtues to decision making, to the way that we hold ourselves accountable to internal principles that we will then use to vet our decisions and our thought process. I feel that this is the definition of an awake person, someone who is inwardly inspecting themselves and then applying those principles which are tried and true in one's own life to the surrounding world to try to leave the world a better place than they found it. So wisdom, self-control, justice, and courage. We're going to be looking at each of these individually and exploring how Plato really demonstrates these in an integrated way in the text. It's a fantastic text. Each week, as we explore each of these virtues, I will be posting in the comments textual references so that you can go into the text and see for yourself. You don't have to just take my word for it. And I'm really excited to have you join me on this journey as we look at Plato's Republic and dive into our first expose of philosophical underpinnings of the Western ethos.